Hi everybody, I am going to do a video for you to explain the annotated bibliography. Up to this point, you've done a lot of pre-writing, you've done some preliminary research, and you've really thought about your topic in some general ways, and then we've sort of whittled it down to some more specific things. You did an interview, you've done several exercises to try to explore a topic within your career field or your intended college major. So at this point, you should have a good idea of the direction for your topic, but you may still be exploring a few things. But the annotated bibliography is a way to record your research, to assess it, to summarize it, and to show someone who's reviewing your research with you, me, your instructor, where you are with it and exactly the progress and the process that you're using to do the research. So this is a common assignment. It's the word annotated bibliography is a very general term for a research document. It's not an essay. It is a kind of technical document. So I'm going to take you through the aspects and the requirements for that document and sort of give you the meaning behind what you're being asked to do. So for a lot of you, you have not been asked to do this before, so it may be a little bit intimidating, but I'm going to try to kind of build it up and take it in parts so that hopefully it will make sense and you can be very successful with the assignment. So I'm in our weekly folder right now, and I've gone into the annotated bibliography folder. So just to be clear, I'm going to get out of this just to let you know how I got here. I'm in our weekly folder, and here's sort of the announcement. I've given you all the parts and expectations for the assignment in the weekly announcement. I've also given you a video to remind you of some of the academic tone and academic writing expectations for the class, or really for any college writing. And then I've created an annotated bibliography folder and a claim statement writing folder. So these two folders are the things you'll be working with as you write your annotated bibliography. So let's start with this, and I'm going to go into this folder, and you'll see a lot of things. I've linked you to the 7th edition APA formatting video. This is just a formatting video to show you how to do your cover page and how to just do some of the nuts and bolts pieces to format your actual document. And then I've got a link to the Purdue Online Writing Lab, and they have some of the 7th edition information as well as the annotated bibliography overview. So I'm giving you the overview, but just in case you want an extra element to go with that, you can get that with the Purdue Online Writing Lab. I've given you some student samples. I may do an extra video in a few days, maybe midweek, to go over some samples with you, but I think just to start with, just get an idea of what I'm being asked to do, and then we may go over a sample in another video. And I did give you a grading rubric. But hopefully this will help you, sort of navigate the assignment. I have given you a peer review sheet. We're not doing a peer review sheet or a peer review process for this. I just have sort of given you that as a guideline for things that I'm looking for. If you do work with a tutor, or if someone, just a personal friend or someone wants to review your paper, that would give them an idea of what we're looking for. And it also gives you an idea of what I'm looking for. I've sort of broken down the assignment in that peer review sheet. It's a chart, and you could use it maybe as a check sheet as you work through the annotated bibliography. All right, so I have two sort of handouts here. One is the actual assignment, and it'll take you through all the guidelines for the assignment. And then there's just a general handout that sort of outlines some of the parts of the annotated bibliography. And between these two handouts, some of the information may be a little repetitive, but it doesn't hurt to see it a couple of times just so you understand it better. But the actual assignment information is in this one, so I'm going to start here. Any assignment I give you in this class, I always give you guidelines, and I tell you what my expectations are for the assignment, and I give you sort of clues on what to present. So whenever I do a video, it just seems like whatever I'm trying to get to open will not open as quickly as I want it to. So I do apologize for that, but I've got to move this over so that we can all see it. Here it goes. Hopefully it'll go full screen for us. Okay, I'm going to make it a little bigger. So whenever you're asked to write an annotated bibliography, it's usually based around a research project of some sort. Most of the time you'll be asked to do this prior to writing any kind of document such as an essay, or in biology or some other science you may do an annotated bibliography before you do some sort of project or experiment. This is a common college level type of assignment, but the main reason why you're asked to do it is just to show where your research stands at that point. Most instructors, and I would say the majority of instructors, will allow you to continue your research after you've supplied them with your initial annotated bibliography, because it's sort of understood that you would continue to research and you would continue to explore the topic. You know, I can't promise what every instructor does or what their expectations are, but that's sort of the common way that we approach the assignment. You may have an instructor at some point who says, hey, you know, this amount of research is all I'm allowing you to use. You have to utilize this in the paper or the project that's coming up. But I think most of us do allow for some fluid movement between what you show us in the annotated bibliography and maybe what you do before you turn in the final paper or the final project that is dealing with that research. So just to give you the definitions, sort of, I always like to tear things down and just understand what it means. So to annotate means to note, to take notes on something, to summarize something, to annotate it. So a lot of times if you're studying and you have a worksheet or something, you'll write notes in the margins. Or if you're writing in a textbook, and everybody doesn't do that anymore, and we do have some e-text, but sometimes people will have a paper textbook and they'll write in the margin so that they can record something, or they'll highlight it. That's considered annotation. You're noting it in some way, or you're trying to make information stand out in some way. You're sort of pulling out key information. So that's to annotate. Bibliography means sources. So I'm sure some of you have even seen at the end of a book a bibliography. Maybe in high school or middle school you were asked to write some sort of research paper, and your teacher may have called the sheet where you put all your sources a bibliography. Of course, with APA we call it the references sheet, but a bibliography is just a gathering of sources, and it's just to show where you got those sources. So annotated bibliographies are usually used, like I said, in larger research projects, and they do help students gather their information and also assess it. And that's an important part of the annotated bibliography, is that you're showing your ability to assess the research and to determine if it's scholarly, if it can be used further in the research project. You're sort of showing the credibility of it, and you're evaluating the information to make sure it's credible and it's useful. So moving through, the annotated bibliography term is a very generic term. It just means what I said. You're citing and you're making notes for your research that you've gathered. So it uses a variety of skills. It uses your intellect. It uses your ability to be critical, analytical, and it's also showing that you can do informed library research. We've talked about that leading up to this assignment, because I've asked you to assess some preliminary sources. I've asked you to look at some scholarly sources, and we've looked at how to take a project from just a thought to a more defined scholarly research agenda, like where we're really just kind of transferring everything into a scholarly database search. So there are 3 things that you have to include in your annotation for my class. When I teach an annotated bibliography, I sort of stick with the most common or the most general way that you'll probably be asked to do an annotated bibliography, because I don't know who you're going to have next for your instructor, but I want you to have been taught just the regular way to do it. Now, just like with an essay or any other assignment, you may have another instructor and they deviate from that kind of norm of an assignment. That doesn't mean that that instructor is wrong. That doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. It just means that that's what they've asked you to do. So it's always important to look at the guidelines that your instructor kind of outlines for you in an assignment and do what they're asking you to do with that particular assignment. So like I said, sometimes you're asked to do an annotated bibliography in a history class or a science class. And in that case, they may have different criteria for you to put into your annotations. The size of your annotations may change. For my class, we'll just do a 1-paragraph annotation for each source. And you may get in another class and they ask for 3 paragraphs or a whole page. When I was in graduate school, most of my annotated bibliographies stretched from about 1 to 2 pages. But that was graduate school, and this is a second level English class in an undergraduate degree, so I'm not going to ask you for longer summaries and longer annotations for your work. So I just stick to 1 paragraph. And here I have outlined the 3 things that I want you to include in that annotation paragraph. So first I want you to summarize the source. You need to identify it. You need to tell your reviewer what type of source it is. So you need to identify it as a journal article, a website, a video, a documentary, a book, whatever it is. If it's a textbook, define it as a textbook. If it's a certain kind of article, explain what kind of article it is. And then it's a good idea to include the authors' names. Now, if you have 10 authors, you don't have to include all 10 authors. You could just put the first 2. Usually those are the ones that are the main writers for the project. A lot of times the extra names in a citation may be graduate students, maybe colleagues of the main researchers. So usually you can assume that the first couple of names are the main writers or researchers of the project. And you can also show where it was published. You're mainly with the summary trying to identify it, and you're trying to summarize what the main points of it are. So you want to include a main idea with that summary. Next, you want to analyze and evaluate the information itself. You want to show the credibility of it, and you want to show how it's academic in nature. So some things that you can look for would be the background of the authors, if that's available. In some published work, they may have a biography, or they may show the credentials of the writers. That's not always available, but if it is, you could include that in your evaluation process. You also sometimes can show the authority of the information or the people who wrote it. And also, I would challenge you, really what I'm looking for my annotations and what I want my students to do is I like to see you evaluate parts of the information, because again, you're trying to prove that it's credible and it has an authority with the topic that you're researching. So I think it's good to take key points of information from the article or from the source and evaluate it, show why it's credible, show why it's important, feature it in some way in your paragraph. Then finally, you're going to synthesize. And whenever you synthesize or you sync something up, you're putting it together. And so since this is a larger research project, I need you to justify or show how it may be used moving forward with the project, how it really doesn't fit and why, or if you're considering it for some reason. That's what I call sort of the maybe. Sometimes at the beginning of a research project, you're not 100% sure if you would use it or not. So if you're not sure, it's okay to say that. You want to phrase it academically, of course, but you could show that this article includes a lot of data collection and case studies that could be used to prove, but it's not determined yet if it will be utilized in further assignments for this research project. Remember that you can't use first person, so you can't say my research project or my work for this research project. So you just want to say the research project. And we understand as a class that this is a semester-long research project. You'll have many different assignments associated with that research, but it's one big research project that we're doing. So don't just say paper or essay, because there are a lot of different things that we're doing with the information that we're collecting. Okay, so you have to do all 3 of those things in that order: summary, analysis, and synthesis. A lot of students ask me, how many sentences am I looking for? Honestly, most college instructors don't count paragraphs or sentences. We're looking for quality of information, and we're wanting efficient writing. But sometimes you can also not do enough. So here's just a little bit of an outline of how you may count sentences, but I personally am not going to sit here and count sentences, but this is just a good way to approach it. The summary really works best, like say 2 to 3 sentences. One sentence is oftentimes not enough. It's almost too broad if you don't give some specifics with the summary. The analysis and evaluation is usually 2 to 3 sentences as well. If you go to 4, that's okay. I would say 1's not enough. If you have 2 really well-written, very specific sentences that fully evaluate the source, then you'll probably be okay. But not everyone can do that at this point. So just make sure that you are specific with your writing and your information that you're giving. A lot of students, when they first start writing for college work, they just want to do very brief comments, or they're very broad in the way they approach giving information. And you've sort of got to break that habit. You've got to start being very specific, and you've got to follow through and explain everything. So, sometimes that does take a couple of sentences. The good news is with the synthesis part of the paragraph that you'll show, that is maybe 1 to 2 sentences, because really all you're doing there is just justifying it and showing how it will or will not or could be utilized with the project and how it syncs up with it. How does this prove the claim that you're trying to make? Okay, I'm going to give you a different video just on claim writing. I just don't, it's going to be too long if I try to do it with the annotated bibliography overview. Here's an example of how your annotation and your citation will appear in the document. And like I said, I do have a student sample. I think I have like maybe 8 in the folder that you can utilize. But here's just a quick little snapshot of it. Note that this is single-spaced, and in your work, because APA does require double spacing, that this would be double spaced if you turned it in as the assignment. Here I've just shown it to you in single space because if I were to print this out, it would save paper, and so I just single spaced it. So your citation and your paragraph will be double spaced. So notice how the citation has a hanging indent. All citations have to have this indentation after the first line, and that's called a hanging indent. This is in APA formatting, so make sure that you've double checked all your citations and that they are formatted in APA. Next, I have an annotation paragraph here, so I'll just go through it with you really quickly. So the first sentence is, Herbert London, the Dean of Journalism at New York University and author of several books and articles about the television industry, explains how television contradicts 5 commonly believed ideas. He uses specific examples of events seen on television, such as the assassination of John Kennedy, to illustrate his points. So we see there that this person has summarized the main parts of the article. The one thing that I'll tell you that if you were my student that I would sort of ding you on for this is this particular student did not identify if this is an article or book or whatever. You can sort of tell that from the citation and the way that it's formatted, but it is a courtesy and it's an expectation for me that you identify the type of source in your annotation. And if you don't do that, you will get dinged by a few points every time you don't do it. So it would be better if it said in this article, Herbert London, then he does this, or in this book. So that way you just quickly identify it for the reviewer. Next, we're going to see how the student sort of evaluates some of the information. So the student writes, his examples have been selected to contradict such truisms as seeing is believing, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and satisfaction is its own reward. London uses logical arguments to support his ideas. He does not refer to any previous work on the topic. And then it goes on, London's style and vocabulary would make the article of interest to any reader. So I'm not super fond of this kind of vague language to any reader. I would really like for you to show what audience it was intended to impress. So is it an academic reader? Is it a general news reader? Whoever it would be that would be interested in this information. what was the purpose of writing the article. So that was your evaluation, and I believe that was like maybe 3 sentences. I didn't really, like I said, I don't really count sentences, but that was a good, meaty 3 sentences. And then finally, you'll see the synthesis, and that reads, this source will support the claim that visual media is more effective than written text. Very simply written, it shows that it does support the claim, and then it gives us sort of a kind of preview of how it might be used moving forward with the research project, what this source would be useful to do for the research. So I do have a link here where you can look at other annotated bibliographies. Keep in mind that any instructor does have the right to tweak what they are asking you to put in your annotation. I have had colleagues who require a personal sort of reflection where they're using first person in the annotation part. I do not like first person, and I don't allow it in the annotation, but you may have an instructor who asks for that. I've also had colleagues who like for students to concentrate heavily on the author, specifically to their background or to their publishing rights and things like that. I'm not as interested in that. I like more about the information, because I think the purpose of you doing the annotated bibliography is to review the information and determine if it's something that you can utilize moving forward with other projects. And so I'd rather you concentrate more on the information that's available in the article. So for this assignment, I'm asking you to choose 10 sources. You have done an interview, so the good news is I do allow that as one of your sources. So you just need to cite the interview as a personal communication, and then you have to assess it, and you'll have to summarize it, and you'll have to evaluate the information that you got from the interview, and then you'll have to show, would that interview be something that would be used as you move forward into the topic. Some of the interviews are just more general, and you may assess that it's not something that you believe would be used in future work with this topic. So you're going to do 10 sources, so you'll have 10 citations. Those should be alphabetized. You alphabetize, so here when we see Herbert or London H, this would be alphabetized by L. Let's say there was no author. Whenever there's not an author, you start with the title. So in that case, if there were no author, you would start with F. And then, so the first thing that would be in a citation would be 5 myths of the television age, and then the date. So whatever the first thing is there is how you alphabetize it. Okay. When you select a topic, we've done this for the last several weeks. We've discussed how to explore it and everything, and a lot of times with an annotated bibliography, we're just trying to force you to, or encourage you to kind of trim down your ideas and kind of focus more on one track of thinking about a certain research topic. So as you select it and as you choose the sources and as you explore the topic, we're just trying to get you to funnel it down to something specific. So that's what this talks about here. And then you do want to use Times New Roman 12 font. In the 7th edition of APA, they have opened up a few fonts that can be used, but I'm going to stick with what they used to require. They used to only allow Times New Roman. Now there are a handful of fonts that they will allow, but I, as your instructor, am telling you that I require Times New Roman font 12. So that's another tip to this, and you do want a double space. So here, again, I'm repeating some of the information, but I think when you haven't done an annotated bibliography before, sometimes you need a little guidance with what you're being asked to do. So here I've given you sort of a repeat of what an annotated bibliography is and what you're doing with this information. Again, an annotated bibliography is not an essay. It's just a sort of a technical document where you're just sort of systematically giving a citation and then an annotation, then a citation and an annotation, and that just repeats 10 times. The citation goes with the annotation. So with an annotated bibliography, you do not have a references page with all the sources, because the sources are integrated with the annotation paragraphs. So again, here I've sort of outlined again summary, analysis, and synthesis, the 3 things that you're required to do. This says you're not required to provide a formal cover page. However, I want you to do a cover page because we need to practice that. And I've given you the video on how to format it. And this is the perfect time for me to give you some feedback. With the cover page, I'm not as strict of a grader on the first assignment because I just want to see that you've practiced it and you've put your best foot forward, and I don't tend to take as many points off if there are errors, because by the time we get to the next assignment, I will, count off for formatting for the cover page. So while there is not a required cover page in general for annotated bibliographies, I'm requiring one for this one because I just want you to get some practice with doing the APA cover page. And again, I did give you a tutorial on how to format that for 7th edition. This is a high stakes assignment, meaning it's a major writing assignment. And this says averaged into 50% of the grade. I'm going to change that and repost it because I used to count all the major stuff 50% and all the general things 50%, and then I changed it to 60%. So the major things in this class do count as 60%. And then the due date is in Blackboard, so I didn't really post that here. Here is a quick look at this as sort of an outline. You're going to have a title, and your title should have the words annotated bibliography in them. So it should read annotated bibliography : and then you want to give it a narrowed topic, and that narrowed topic should feature your narrowed topic that you've chosen to research. So annotated bibliography, though, should be in the title, and then you would have the colon and then go to the subtitle of what your particular research topic is. You are going to do a claim statement, and I'm going to post a claim statement video for you to review so that you're clear on what I'm asking you to do with that. And then you're going to do citation, annotation, citation, annotation, and it's all going to be double spaced. Again, I do have samples that you can look at. And hopefully this video has set you up at least to understand the expectations for the assignment, but I think it's important for you to review the student samples to see how they are presented. And then you also have the preliminary research assignment where you did some sources and I gave you some prompts. So you've sort of had some practice with this along the way. So I don't think it's going to be as difficult as it may seem on the first day that you see the assignment. I think once you get into it, it's not going to be that hard to put together because you should be familiar with the research by now. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And also don't hesitate to utilize the Academic Skills Center with the tutors that we supply there. So good luck with your research, and I look forward to reading your annotated bibliographies.